anything else.
We don't want to know.
We're dedicated, yes.
To our favorite shows.
Oh my circuits!
Everybody loves Hypnotoad.
Scary dog!
Pearson has learned ball.
Futurama.
Good evening. You are listening to a Rattlegion Broadcasting Premier Podcast TV Party tonight. I'm your host, the man-did reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Rattledge. And tonight, our favorite show is Shadow and Bone, brought to you by the good people at Netflix. 21 Laps Entertainment and Chronology Loom Studios. Shadow and Bone is an American fantasy streaming television series developed by Eric Heiser, and it premiered on April 23rd, 2021. It is based on the Grisha novels. The Grisha novel trilogy.
I knew it.
I
didn't even look it up, and I knew this was based on a YA series.
Uh-huh. The first of which is Shadow and Bone, and the Six of Crows, which came out in 2012 and 2015, respectively, novel duology by Lee Bardugo. Of course, the man who was brave enough when I complained bitterly to everyone that no one would talk about Shadow and Bone with me, but it was, getting a lot of Twitter reaction, and people were into it, and, it was out there in the mainstream, and we should talk about it, and everyone ran away from me screaming. One man stepped into the breach and said, I don't know what this is, but I'll talk about it with you, homie. And that man is Sean Comer. How do you do, sir?
I'm hardcore, motherfuckers. I step up when others step back.
So this was literally like you just heard me whine. That was my pitch. Like, no one will talk about Shadow and Bone. I will. Cool. So I don't even need to ask you, are you familiar with this? Because I know you're not.
Oh. No, I'm not. I tried it, and look, I don't begrudge anyone what they like as long as they're not actively hurting somebody else through it.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, if you like this show, I would chances are recommend at least 3 or 4 other series or movies that are multitudes better.
Actually,
you'll probably enjoy just as much, if not more.
I want to hear your list, but before you give me that list and sort of incorporate it into the question I want to ask you, as an adult, I mean, asking you as teenager, did you read YA novels seems sort of ridiculous, but as an adult. I mean, you and I a couple of years ago talked about the Hunger Games, and those are going to get re-aired later this year. But, in and around the Hunger Games, there has just been this slew of YA novels that were adapted into either television shows or movies. How much as an adult, how much YA have you consumed of the novels before even the movies and the television shows? Like, have you gone back and read any of this stuff?
Extremely little.
Mm-hmm.
I think as far as the stuff that I've actually gone back and read, Harry Potter, and that's about it.
Okay.
I mean, we do have a copy of the Hunger Games trilogy here at the house. My fiance, Anne, had them in paperback. I specifically said, I'd like to eventually give these a try. So when we were moving and deciding what we were going to throw out, I said, no, let's hold on to these. I'm fixing to have some time on my hands for about the next 12 months anyway. I'm going to have a lot of reading to do. So hold on to them. I'd like to at least give them a go. But no, I don't hate myself enough to have ever forced myself to sit through Twilight. Divergent is technically YA, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, I've had a passing curiosity about Divergent and its adaptations. Is The Maze Runner also YA?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm familiar by name with that. I had a friend back in my college years who all of a sudden just became like rabid horny for the what was the name of it? Alex, I know one of the novels was called Stormbreaker. I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember the name. I swear the series has like an actual proper name to it, and I'm completely blanking on it. But yeah, I'm more the type that I'll give adaptations a glance.
All right, so to answer your question, Stormbreaker this is what you're talking about. Stormbreaker by Anthony Horowitz is a young adult action adventure book.
Mm.
And it's the first novel in the Alex Rider series.
Alex Rider. Thank you. I almost said Alex Ross, but no, he's a legendary comic artist. But really, that's for modern YA. That's about it. And I mean, other than that, my experience with, and I don't even know if you would call it YA really so much as probably juvenile fiction. About the closest you would probably get was, I mean, I rather enjoyed the Fear Street novels when I was a kid.
You read those? The R.L. Stine books that I was messaging you about today. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It was the closest R.L. Stine really got into branching out into slightly more mature horror. And again, I know that that's probably reaching a little bit in terms of the definition of YA as we know it today anyway. But otherwise, I mean, no, I had seen the first Harry Potter movie before I ever picked the books up. In fact, I think I had seen the first 2 or 3 before I really gave the books a go.
So I'm not an avid consumer of YA. I'm becoming more familiar with it because as Hollywood has run out of ideas, there are two minds that they keep going to, and that is comic books, Marvel, DC, or indie. It doesn't seem to matter. They'll adapt anything. The other place that they seem to go to pretty often, the other well, is YA. And so, like, when I'm doing searches for things to talk about on the podcast, if I had $1 for every time I came across something there were 3 things that I come across constantly, and one of them seems fairly obvious and not exactly a big deal. But everything is either based on a novel, based on a YA novel, or based on a comic book.
Why do you think that is?
One, because I think the heavy legwork is already done for you, and plus, Hollywood's not a place of bravery and it's prone to gambling, and so most of these things are already known and well sold IP. So you have a best-selling novel out there. You can at least make the argument of people know what this is. They bought the book. So if we make a movie of it, people will then go see the movie. That's the logic. Kids have disposable income, and in comic books, at least in the terms of Marvel, produced something $1 billion in total, over $1 billion franchise. So I think Hollywood sort of looks at what has adapting Marvel comics has wrought, and looking at best-selling novels, and then looking at specifically YA novels where you're going to get a big kid audience with disposable income. And I think, okay, those are all safe bets. And it's funny because I look at like the Sci-Fi Channel, and the Sci-Fi Channel. I was actually talking about this with Alexis when we talked about Resident Alien. Resident Alien was based on an independent comic book, and if you flip through the list of sci-fi shows for the past decade or so, I would say more than half of them were based on comic books.
Either comics or novels.
Yeah, for sure. And like I said, I think half the legwork is then done for you.
Yeah, we're on about the same page. You have a demonstrable built-in fan base. Any subtext is going to be roughly as dense as cheesecloth. The stories aren't exactly labyrinthine. The source material is beach reading, to put it generously in the first place. So it's really pretty effortless. There's really not a whole lot that you have to do to reshape to reshape almost any of these series into a potential tentpole.
Now, you use the term beat reading, and it's an argument that I make often when we do these television reviews or when we do Damn You Hollywood, and that is, is Hollywood in the business of making prestige entertainment? Sure. People like to win awards. People like to be told that they're smart and interesting and, and have made wonderful art pieces in their medium, but they also got to keep the lights on and the water running. And prestige doesn't always do that. I mean, you look at Nomadland. Nomadland, first of all, got initially released on Hulu. It's had a limited release in theaters, but it had a limited release in theaters because COVID, or it probably would not have found space. Let me walk that back a second. When it got nominated for an Oscar, it probably would have, because a lot of Oscar nominated movies tend to be shown in theaters for one reason or another, both pre-nomination and then post. But for the most part, again, it was a direct-to-Hulu movie and then got played in theaters after the fact. I don't know how many people have actually watched it, but it won Best Picture this year. And I'm sure, and Chloe Zhao is now a named director in Hollywood because of it. Nomadland not only won an Oscar, but it won all kinds of other awards, some other, awards, ceremonies. But, I mean, do you know anyone that's actually seen Nomadland?
Again, it's another one where I'm familiar with it by name, but no, I don't think. aside from a few friends, the only ones I could think of where it would be maybe, like I could see them maybe having seen it. Jeremy Thomas from 411.
Sure.
Has probably watched it. At some point.
He also writes in the film industry. I mean,
well, exactly, and that's what the other names I could think of would all have in common.
Right. So, I know about it, but then I, do podcasts about the film industry on almost a weekly basis. Whereas the Fast and the Furious movie hasn't even come out in the U.S. yet, but its China debut and it's made over $100 million.
Yeah.
So therein lies the conundrum of Hollywood.
Here's what I think is the decisive, albeit probably tap dancing somewhere between cynical and pragmatic stance on it should perhaps be. And here I quote: "Let's play a little game of guess who said it. We have no obligation to make art. We have no obligation to make history. We must always make entertaining movies, and if we make entertaining movies, at times we will reliably make art, history, a statement, or all three." Who said it? No Googling, no cheating.
No, I'm not even looking at my computer. Spielberg.
You're in the right ballpark, but nope.
Who said it?
Michael Eisner.
I was close.
Yep. And like I said, you're in the right strata. It's taken from a quote by legendary American producer Don Simpson. And again, is it a little bit cynical? Yeah, probably. It's Michael Eisner, of course it is. Is it pragmatic? Definitely. But on the other hand, it's also from the mouth of somebody who made Disney a metric shit ton of money.
Here, I'll call you one better. Maybe not better, but just kind of as a point of reference, and then we can move this on. You're talking about Michael Eisner. You're talking about somebody who ran Disney. A multimedia, multi-billion-dollar company, multinational company. And then there's me, who runs a podcast. This dinky little podcast that I do. And there are certain topics that I want to talk about, and there are certain conversations I want to have, because I feel like they're important things to talk about, and I don't want to do this and always just talk about nonsense because it's popular at the time. I want to have some, not all the time, I want to have deep and meaningful and interesting and entertaining conversations. The week that we did the reference stuff, I've referenced that a few times now over the last couple of weeks, months, whatever. Mm-hmm. I didn't care if anyone listened to those podcasts. I mean, I did. I wanted people to listen. Don't get me wrong. But I did not. I did not choose to do the Brubaker and Refn stuff that week because I thought they would be big hits and we would get lots of downloads. I chose to talk about them because we had a free week and I wanted to do something kind of for me. And what came out of that was a 3-hour conversation about French film and detective noir, and it was sort of a therapy session for Jesse, Robert, and I. And it's one of my favorite podcasts from this year. And it's funny because someone new has contacted me about doing podcasts, and he's been on one already. And he was like, one thing I got from talking to you was I don't think I know as much about film as I thought I did. And I said, and I kind of learned from you in that podcast that there's a whole language to this. And I want to learn that language. And I went, great. He's like, so what should I listen to of yours that would help me out with that? And then and that's the first thing I told him was go listen to our Too Old to Die, pack a sack lunch and go listen to our Too Old to Die Young conversation. On the other hand, Jesse and I just reviewed a Saliva EP because I just want to hang out and listen to music, like stupid music with my friend. And I don't want to have a deep and meaningful conversation about life, the universe, and everything. I just want to hear click, click, boom, and go, man, that's awesome. And so that's kind of how I see film and television. I think you have people who, like take like a Zack Snyder, who's like, I want to make a stupid zombie pick, set amidst a casino heist. Cool, go do it. But I also want to tell this Jesus allegory with a superhero. We wish you hadn't, but you did. And I'm not sure the world was better off for it, but Twitter seems to be disagreeing with me right now, so God bless you, Zack Snyder.
Well, I mean, look, when you first kind of decide to tap into the veins of the things that you love the most, two things are far more likely to happen. Number one, you're going to be much more enthusiastic about reading into it and really dissecting it passionately, warts and all, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But also, you are going to find more things that you want to talk about just because, not necessarily because there's a really introspective kind of tete-a-tete to have with somebody else about it, but just because you fucking enjoy it. And sometimes, in some truly glorious, fleeting moments, those two just kind of cross over. Like me, if you get me talking about the Mass Effect trilogy long enough. God, I could talk your ears off for hours about that. Because there's so much that I've absorbed and observed and to unpack there for me that I would just relish breaking down excruciating detail by detail. But then on the other hand, if you were to sit down and talk about Kevin Smith's View Askewniverse movies, I would just be, at some point, I just might sit there and just evolve into 5 minutes of giggling at, you dumb bastard, it's not a schooner, it's a sailboat. But, and that's the thing about YA, is the fact that you do have an opportunity to, I mean, because it's geared towards young adults, you have opportunities with these properties to really ignite conversations that they otherwise not be able to be arsed to engage in. And as I kind of learned this past summer, you can also sometimes turn someone into a lifelong passionate reader through these series. I know this because over the summer, one very important bit of YA experience that I did have, but it wasn't this past summer, it was 2 summers ago. Yeah, it was 1 or 2 summers ago. I forget which one it is. But I've been a huge fan for years of Lisa Foyles. From when she was a video game show host on The Escapist to her YouTube channel, her her voice acting, truly an example of a quirky child actor who went forward and really made good just by being unabashedly herself. So when she says that she wrote a YA novel called Ash Ridley and the Phoenix, as soon as I had some money to spare, I threw down a few bucks and bought a brand new copy. Normally, I'll just buy used whatever. I'm a total skinflint sometimes, but in this case, no. I wanted to support the artist directly. Picked it up, and man, every word of it just drips with a sincere love for the characters and this world that she had built out. So much so that I passed it along to my future step kiddo, Leo. And I knew that they were not necessarily a big reader. And I let them borrow my copy. They so loved it that they said they were in tears by the end of it, and that they were so thankful for having read it, and that they would just love, and they just wanted to go forth and read more. And Anne was just gobsmacked because she pointed out to me they've hardly read anything over the past few years. Everything has been YouTube and TikTok and gaming, but we haven't been able to get them to pick up a book. And so immersed were they that I kind of gave them that copy. I just said, here, you hold on to it, take care of it, I'll get my own to replace it. That's what a good YA series can do, and that's why it's one of the reasons why, much like the opinion we've espoused about children's programming, is I don't buy this notion that it doesn't have to have any thought put into it, or it's okay for it to be lazy or devoid of substance because lol it's for kids, or lol it's for teens. No. Don't do that. Don't challenge them with something more. Give them something to really sink their teeth into and kind of show them from the beginning how big the sky can be, because we've really kind of regressed from our parents' generation, who grew up reading The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and the true classic pillars of sci-fi, like Asimov and Bradbury when they were in school. And now stuff that's, God, most of the time calling it formulaic feels generous.
Yeah, and that's a good segue into actually talking about the show, because that was one of the things you and I talked about before I hit the record button tonight, was Shadow and Bone's not bad. It's just not special in any way. And kind of what I said about Chaos Walking, it just feels like someone wrote a checklist of how to write a YA novel, and then someone took that checklist and then developed both Chaos Walking and Shadow and Bone from said, it was like, here's the formula, and then we'll just plug in some numbers into these variables, and voila, YA. And I'm like, all right. I mean, so premise: the story centers around characters from the Grishaverse, primarily the members of the Second Army of Ravka and the crows from Ketterdam. I'm going to keep reading this, but I want you to keep this in mind. A couple years ago when Rogue One came out, that half of the bad guys were sort of in the midst of just their annoyance with the new Star Wars. they were doing a lot of videos, kind of just commenting and editorializing on Lucasfilm post Disney. And when Rogue One came out, they spent the first 5 minutes of that review just bagging on various aspects of it. One of the things they did to the point of all this is they were reading off a cast list. And they were like, so-and-so is this. And it just starts to sound like nonsense after a while. So after a while, like, instead of saying the actual actor's name, they would go, Riff Raff von Doomselberg is playing Slim Slam, you know. That's how this gets after a while, because I read this earlier, and I was like, man, I know what this is, but this just sounds like they threw a bunch of nonsense words together.
At times, to you, did it feel a little bit like kind of a lazy Soviet allegory?
Yeah, definitely, especially the aesthetic, the costumes and everything. The show follows Alina Starkov, who discovers that she is a Grisha, a person who can perform small science, basically magic, and can summon the light. The ability places her in the center of the war that has been raging between Ravka, Fierda, and Shuhan. Throughout the show, Alina attempts to control her power so that she can destroy the Shadowfold, a sea of darkness created centuries ago by the Black Heretic, inhabited by Volcra. You see what I mean? The story also switches to that of Crows, a gang, and their struggle for power against Pekka Rollins and Ketterdam. Alright, so our lead is played by Jessie Mae Lee. She's Alina Starkov. And then filling out the cast is R.T. Renaud as Mal, Freddie Carter as Kaz Brecker, the leader of the Crows, Amita Suman as Inej Gaffa, who is a member of the Crows. Kit Young is my favorite character in this whole thing. Jasper Fahey is a member of the Crows. He was the Top Hat kid, in case you couldn't figure out who that was.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Ben Barnes as General Kerrigan. You might remember him as Jigsaw from the Punisher series. And Zoe Wanamaker as Bagra, Alina's Grisher trainer. All right, and then there's a whole bunch of like reoccurring characters. But
wait. So Ben Barnes. So Kerrigan wasn't played by the guy from 50 Shades of Grey.
No. Ben Barnes.
Oh, I'm gonna have to correct Ann on that.
Yeah, Ben Barnes, who plays the Black Heretic. He was Billy Russo, Jigsaw, from The Punisher. He has also been in Seventh Son, Jackie and Ryan, Gold Digger, Westworld, Sons of Liberty, etc. And a bunch of plays. And some movies. Handful of movies. All right. So, Episode 1. Searing Burst of Light. And this is an 8-episode thing. In East Ravka, Alina Starkov is a cartographer who is reunited with her childhood friend Mal Oritsev. Mal is chosen to be a part of the team who will cross the Fold, a dark place swarming with flying monsters named Volcra. Alina sabotages the maps and is allowed to join the crew, like you do. The team enters the Fold, overlooked by the arrival of General Kerrigan, the Shadow Summoner. Shortly after entering the Fold, they are attacked by Volcra. Alexei, a crew member, escapes. Alina discovers her Sun Summoner abilities by unintentionally using them to fight off the Volcra in order to protect Mal. In Ketterdam, Kaz Brecker, Inej Gaffa, and Jasper Fahey compete with mob boss Pekka Rollins for a job that pays 1 million Krug. When it is discovered that Driesen first needs a heartrender, Kaz beats Pekka to the only known one. Driesen reveals to Kaz that he's captured Alexei. The Heartrender gets Alexei to reveal that Alina is a Sun Summoner, and Driesen reveals that getting Alina is the job. All right, Sean, what did you think of Episode 1?
You fail at world building, series. Seriously, so much right off the bat is just... It's just thrown around casually in conversation, and your response to so much of it is bound to be, wow. What's that? Just you are given you are given no context, no explanation, just no reason to care about any of these people or events or references nearly the reverence and investment of the characters. You do not get a moment like at the start of the Fellowship of the Ring.
Oh, I was just thinking that.
Yeah, where you just get at least a vague, short, sweet synopsis. And you know what? Newsflash, guys, there's nothing wrong with that. Done right and done with the right tempo, there's nothing wrong with at least being given the very slightest framework. Tons of your favorite properties have done it. Into every generation, a Slayer is born. Sean Connery's narration at the start of Highlander. Like I said, the opening few minutes of Fellowship. Something that gives you something. Well, hell, again, hi, Mass Effect nerd here. At the start of the very first Mass Effect, you get at least a little bit of a primer on how the universe came to be in the state that it's in right now. If you read old comics, you will see just unassuming, inconspicuous cliff notes at the bottom of certain panels that point to at least which issue you can glance at if you don't happen to get a certain reference to past continuity, because they built those issues on the presumption that every comic could be somebody's first comic.
How about Star Wars as a really obvious one?
Oh, of course. Heaven forbid I missed the most obvious example of the bunch. No sarcasm. I can't believe I forgot that.
I mean, that title crawl, as famous as it is, was Lucas saying, hey, everything I'm about to show you is strange and wonderful and has a bizarre name. Here's what's happening.
Or Space, the Final Frontier.
Mm-hmm.
There's no shame in that. There's no shame in that whatsoever. But instead, you're kind of just going the crawl route, where you just kind of talk excitedly about thing and hope that audience just goes with the flow.
Yeah, it's kind of like you are waking up from a coma and you have amnesia and you have no idea about the world around you or who these people are or why they're interacting the way they are, but something just caught on fire and now you have to run. What? So you as a you as a viewer just sort of are dropped into this world that has been happening apparently for a while, is in the midst of some, larger conflict, and there's no point of view character. I think that's my major criticism of the first episode and why this was a little hard for me to get into at first. It picks up later in the series once Alina gets to the castle and and she starts her Jedi training, but but you can't hear it, but I just rolled my eyes. But Alina is firmly aware of what's going on, and she just doesn't want to be left behind because she wants to be with Mal. You're introduced to Mal, and he's a soldier, and he and he has kind of a thing for Alina, but they are also childhood friends, and it's isn't this teenager really complicated? Okay, and so you're introduced to them, and you're introduced to the Crows in a separate thing, but they're all very involved in what they're doing. They're in the middle of it, and they don't take any time to explain any of it to you. So there's no character there that's like, it's my first day at the army, and I don't know where I'm going. Okay, well, let me tell you that this is a thing, and that you should avoid, and them over there, they're trying to kill you. None of that. Or, as you've just established, I wish, there had been, like, opening narration, where you have Galadriel who says, here are your bad guys, here are your good guys, and this is why they're fighting. or Star Wars, as we mentioned, you know, here's some stuff. You know, here's an opening crawl of things that are happening. Go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. Instead of just here's your side of Hunger Games au gratin. Enjoy.
I don't have a whole lot to say about the first episode beyond, you know, the lead is very pretty. So at the very least, from an aesthetic point of view, I enjoy watching her scenes. I think she has good. It's not a sexual show, but humans are sexual beings, and there can be sexual chemistry between, you know, characters. And they're clearly there to at least evoke some of that. And she does. Her and Mal have some good fun chemistry together. I like them on screen. The crows. The crows are okay.
The crows are the best part of the damn show.
Well, Jasper, I love. Jasper, I love. I love Jasper for all the same reasons I loved Hugh Grant in The Gentleman. You know, he's a fun character. He knows his business, and his business is killing and business is good. But he's also very like pragmatic, and as the show unravels, and he's sort of put in the situations where he's like, why does my life have to be this hard? I kind of got a kick out of that. You know, he's not trying to be a hero or go above and beyond. He is trying to get paid to do a thing and does not need the uphill slog.
He just wants to stay sexy and shoot things.
Yeah, and who doesn't want to be sexy and shoot things? You know, bang a nice, good-looking boy in a horse stable. Haven't we all had that fantasy? Come on now. Anything else about episode 1? If not, I'm going to move on to episode 2.
Enjoy your time with Pekka Rollins, because in about 2 episodes you're going to forget he exists.
We're all someone's monster.
I was gonna say, in fact, that's something good to keep in mind about a lot of these characters. They're so poorly fleshed out and defined, and so, again, with the exception of the crows, so largely devoid of even a glimmer of personality, and so reduced to just your standard YA stereotypes. You don't bother remembering their names. I wouldn't if I were you. Just don't hurt yourself.
Yeah, characters disappear for whole parts of the show, and then they reappear later on. You're like, oh, you're back, cool.
And then you realize that you never really missed a fucking thing for their absence.
No.
No.
Actually, one last thing. So this whole first episode takes place on an army base, but it's like an army base in like 1812. You know, it's like, like I'm not really interested in the setting at all. It's very drab, and again, like if you're going to shoot a war picture, you're going to see a lot of camouflage. I get that, and so that they're in kind of beige and drab, and everything is gray. Like this is not a pretty world to look at. But I have found that is also a thing in YA.
It's a lazy Russian allegory in Victorian cosplay.
Yeah, very much so. I have found in my brief kind of viewing of various YA things that there's always a special. Most of the time it's a girl, but it can be a boy. Parents are terrible and or dead. And it's everything, and they all take place in a post-apocalyptic future of some kind. It's never a happy place. So,
no.
Right, in East Ravka, Alina is taken to Kirigan, who proves she is a sun summoner. She is then taken to the Little Palace. On her way, her convoy is ambushed by Druskel Grisha hunters.
Yeah. Druskela.
Most of the Grisha are killed, but Kirigan rescues her. They make it to the Little Palace, where Alina is given a room in Ketterdam. Kaz is threatened by Pekka to give him the job, but he refuses. Inej is summoned by Tanti Helene, who runs the pleasure house she used to work at before Kaz bought her. Helene promises to give Inej her freedom if she kills Arkin, a human trafficker. Kaz discovers that a man called the Conductor is ferrying people across the fold, then discovers that Arkin is the Conductor, and Tanti wants him dead. Kaz stops Inej from killing Arkin, then gives Tanti his club. as an acceptable collateral and promises to pay off his debt for Inej once he completes the job. Yeah, as we get more into Alina learning her Sun Summoner powers, I was kind of more drawn into the show. But there's a lot of setup here in these first couple episodes that really kind of drags. The Fold is an interestingly horrific enough place. It's also black on black on black, so it's not great to look at. And the bat vampire monster creatures are threatening enough, but they're not. But again, they're black creatures on a black setting.
We also barely see them.
Yeah, it's black creatures on a black cloudy setting in a dark pirate ship. Like, what the fuck?
And look, if you know how to shoot it, keeping your beasties, your big bad, really shadowy and hidden until revealing them in all their full unspeakable terror at just the right moment can work just fine. Hi, Halloween. How you doing? That's not what this is.
I know a lot of people hated it, but I really liked the Game of Thrones episode in the final season where it's almost entirely pitch black when the Night Army attacks. Mm-hmm. I know people hated it. I know it was very hard for people to watch. But I think you can get away with that once for a very specific reason. And I think what they were trying to go for, and for some people it didn't achieve its goal, but for me it did, was trying to evoke this idea of, things are so black and so hopeless and things are so on the edge that it's supposed to evoke the feeling of hopelessness. There is no light, in this. It is the darkest of darkest nights. You can get away with that under certain circumstances with very specific context, and you can do it once.
It's like you can tell. Another good example is like Stranger Things, the upside down. You can tell that some effort went into really setting the upside down apart. Really, really kind of thinking about what do we want this to be. And you can tell that nothing near approaching that kind of effort went into really making the Fold anything even close to interesting. And hell, along the same line, the Volcra, I would have really appreciated it if maybe they would have done something to make the Volcra as memorable, as memorably fearsome as the Demogorgon.
Anything else about episode 2 that was remarkable to you?
In a theme for the show? Nope.
Episode 3, The Making at the Heart of the World. Alina meets with Taylor, Genya Safin, and they prepare for a meeting with King Peter and the court. At court, Alina astonishes all with her abilities, which are amplified by Kerrigan's touch. After befriending 2 Grisha, she spars with Zoya. I wish Robert were here to watch me mispronounce things. Naz Yelensky, who beats her. In the library, Alina meets the apparet, who tells her more of the stag she has been dreaming about. Alina then meets with Bagra, who bitterly tells Alina to return when she believes in herself. Meanwhile, Kaz, Jesper, Inej, and Arkin are unable to get to Nina Zenik, a heartrender, willing to break them into the little palace in time. 4 pounds short of the needed coal, they dare to make the train voyage through the Fold. They fall behind schedule and are attacked by Volcra, but Jesper uses superior marksmanship abilities to get them safely through. On a ship, the Juskel, who captured Nina, restrain her along with other Grishers. So, real quick, the thing that stood out to me about episode 3, I actually really like the train sequence. Like I said, the show's not all bad. It's a little hard to follow at times and not all the way interesting through a lot of it, but there are definitely some good set pieces. The train sequence was one of them. They shot that well. Again, it's all black on black on black on gray on black on black, but it was still remarkably, despite that, it was still a readable action sequence. There was a lot of tension in that scene. Since I don't know the books, I don't know if these characters are going to make it or not. I could believe that they were in deadly peril and might not have made it. Jasper shooting shit is probably the coolest thing in the show.
Far away.
So watching him do that is a very fun thing to watch in a television show. Also, Alina, when she has her coming out party, and she does her sun summoning magic routine. That was fun to watch. And Alina, in the first 2 episodes, is sort of a dour, drab, whiny, shrill character. And then she kind of gets over it in episode 3, and she stops bellyaching about Mal as such, and she starts focusing on being a pretty princess with who can do magic. And it might sound weird, but I kind of liked her that way. When she's smiling and having fun and being a little flirty, and she wants to get in the pants of Jigsaw, Ben Barnes, General Kerrigan. I'm like, oh, she actually has a lot of charisma. She has a lot of pizzazz. And so here's where I started to pay a little bit more attention to the show. I started, to really get into it because I'm like, oh, okay, she's finally not whining. She's having fun with this character. Fun things are happening. They've changed the color palette a little bit, and there's a decent action sequence that isn't utterly unreadable. Okay.
It lasts about an episode.
All right, show. You've at least got me hooked. I now don't hate that I'm watching this. Go. What did you think?
Well, so Harry has been chosen to be tribute, and so now whisked off to Hogwarts to train before they can join the Quarter Quell. It's so much of it is just YA 101. Oh, and then she meets Yoda, who teaches her that the secret of the Force is in the heart of the cards. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah, that line about come back when you believe. I was like, do or do not. There is no try. Ugh.
It's and yeah, we're teased with some truly seemingly empowering development, a glimmer of hope, and gets dashed the instant she's reunited with Mal.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, enjoy it while it lasts, which is about an episode.
This was my problem with Wonder Woman, specifically in the sequel, that, for 70 years, she sat around pining for her dead boyfriend that she knew for a long weekend.
And, can we... Yeah, and all because, Harry wanted to be reunited with PETA. And can we also just acknowledge that just because Alina couldn't endure one single more moment in horny jail, she got all her friends killed with this little stunt?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she didn't think this through any more than... I burn map, I get on ship, and not whole unit might be dispatched with me into the hellscape. She gets pretty much her entire unit massacred in the throes of her selfish yearning to get into Mal's burlap trousers.
I don't even know if she wanted to get into his trousers. That's the thing. Like they have sexual tension, but we're talking like Pacific Rim levels of will they, won't they don't.
Yeah.
It's always like she gives them flirty eyes. It's like you ever watch Bambi when the three animal characters find their female counterparts, and the females all have those eyes, and they're like, duh, She's giving him Twitter pated eyes, And then he's like, penis? And she's like, no, that's not what I meant. I don't know what you meant then. We're just friends. Well, then put sunglasses on or something, because you've got Twitter painted eyes. Listen, I get it. No means no, but you are sending mixed signals, madam.
It's and yeah, Jesper's absolute cold-blooded marksmanship is far and away, by leaps and bounds, the highlight of the entire episode. It lasts about 60 seconds.
When Wrath of Man is available for you to watch on VOD, if you're not getting to them, I guess you live a million miles from a movie theater. So when you're able to watch it VOD, Jasper one-shot killing people and things, almost as good as Jason Statham doing it in Wrath of Man. I just want you to know that.
Yeah, Jesper steals the whole damn show.
Yeah,
it's
it
just
does.
all eight episodes of it.
He's a good-looking kid too, man. Again, if you want your YA to, it's got to have that, like, I call it, like, sexy CW appeal to it. And I give the show credit, man. This is one, like, if you were just going strictly on looks of the cast, it's a pretty sexy cast. No complaints there. Like, these were not unpleasant people to look at.
Can we just have a show about the crows? I mean, what have we made, like 3-4 Vampire Diaries spin-offs? It can work.
I'm sure somewhere out there someone has written something about the crows too. So, all right, episode 4, which is an unpronounceable word, so I'm not even going to try. Alina goes riding with Kerrigan, like you do, who decides the two are on a first name basis. He talks about how he felt like an outsider as a child due to being a descendant of the Black Heretic, and Alina realizes how much he needs her. Bagra shows Alina that she is holding back from Mal, but needs to focus on herself so that she can access her superpowers and become Captain Marvel. Wait, no. You're too emotional, Alina. Wait, no. Alina at which point says, do you want to arm wrestle for the Tesseract? All right, I'm done. That's the last one. If she wants to master her powers. Another encounter. Are you getting the impression this is a bit derivative, people? Because I don't know if me and Sean have made that clear. I don't want to confuse people. Better thoughts about this. After another encounter with Kerrigan, after not receiving a letter from Mal for the nth time, wow, Alina finally puts herself and Grisha first and makes true progress with her powers, because the secret to powerfulness is selfishness. Meanwhile, Mal and all of his friends are about to get killed in a forest. Volunteers for a mission to find the stag that can amplify Grisha power, and the reward is a visit to the Little Palace. He and his team are ambushed by Fjordans, but Mal survives. He then sees the stag and vows to reunite with Alina. The Crows and Arkans steal the blueprints for the Little Palace and join a troupe of traveling performers who will be performing in the Little Palace for the winter fair. The ship carrying Nina hits a bad storm. Kerrigan sends Fjord to find Nina, as she has not checked in recently. I gotta be honest, starting with the next episode, I was not even paying attention to the Nina storyline.
Who is Nina again?
All right, so Nina in episode 5 will show up on a beach with Boris, her Russian captor.
Oh, right.
Who she will be really flirty with for the next 4 episodes.
Oh, yeah. The mismatched, star-crossed, racially tense lovers storyline.
Yep. Mm-hmm. She's going to show him her ample bosom, and he will question what it is to be a Russian.
Yeah, because I mean, she's a hobbit, he's a Sith.
See, you could have just went for the elf, because they've done that too. But No.
True.
Let's mix up our metaphors.
Look, if the show's gonna do it, I'm goddamn sure going to.
Hey, listen, I've already made a Captain Marvel reference, and it's all good.
I owe this show no more effort than it puts out.
So yeah, the thing that stood out to me about episode 4 is these poor guys that joined Mal on this mission, the suicidal mission. I gotta go find my girlfriend. We're coming with you. Wow, we're all dead for no reason, and we would have gotten no reward for this. But goddamn it, the power of friendship.
Oh, look, he needed his Merry and Pippin.
Merry and Pippin lived, and were essential to the battle of to their participation in the fields of Paranor. Gosh,
I almost said Trenzalore, but no, that's a Doctor Who reference.
The big battle outside of Gondor.
Yeah, I'm like, God damn.
I think it's pronounced Pelennor. I'm going to look it up. You talk.
Yeah, this is what this goddamn show has done to us.
Pelennor Field, yes.
We can't even keep our fandom straight. This has so deadened us. We are, God, we joke about it, but we have literally become dumber for having watched all 8 episodes of this.
And so Aragorn showed up with a Terminator army on the fields of Avengers Tower. Wait, what?
and look, and I say all this as somebody who loves the Mortal Kombat game where you can pit Scorpion against Rambo, the Terminator, RoboCop, the Joker, or Spawn.
And Freddy Krueger.
In 2 games ago, yes, and Freddy. and between that, the Alien, Predator, Leatherface, and Jason.
Wow, give it a couple more years and I'm going to end up in that game. Just throwing scheduled dates of podcasts at people. Try Netflix. All right. Episode 4, go.
I'm going to have to stop laughing first for a second. Okay, so great. Let's add a MacGuffin run to the episode because why the fuck not? Once more, the part that absolutely engaged me most was the infiltration planning by the Crows. Just hands down the most entertaining parts, and they are the 3 that I keep wanting them to come back to. At this point, I was really my give a fuck was really starting to fracture when it came to Alina and Kieran.
He's so obviously the villain, and so you're waiting and waiting and waiting for the shoe to drop to where he pulls off his mask and yells, "It was me, Eddie! It was me the whole time." And so yeah, I get that because it's not like he's a terribly interesting character or their sexiness is all that alluring. It's like, all right, you're a little sexy together, but he's a bad guy, and so like, come on, get on with it already.
Yeah, and I'm not even going to pretend that Nina's storyline is necessarily all that interesting because, again, it's by the numbers. I mean, there's nothing wrong with going back to a theme or a trope that maybe you've seen 1,000 times. I mean, think of it as being like building a house. Foundations are largely poured the same way. There's not much new under the sun in modern architecture. It's not like building your foundation out of Ritz crackers is necessarily going to be an innovation that's going to make a better house. But it's what you build on top of and around that creates something appealing. This this doesn't even bother with that. This is basically sticking a prefab home on top of a dependable by the numbers foundation. You're not even trying to do like some Frank Lloyd Wright shit with this, and trying to give us anything fresh. You know, it's basically a home in a cookie cutter planned community.
Well, Sean, maybe instead of kind of going through a by the numbers YA checklist formula, they could have livened it up. They could have spiced it up had they used Grammarly. Because Grammarly's AI-powered products help people communicate more effectively. Grammarly helps you write mistake-free on Gmail, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and nearly anywhere else you write on the web. Grammarly corrects hundreds of grammar, punctuation, and spelling mistakes while also catching contextual errors, improving your vocabulary, and suggesting style improvements. To download Grammarly today, go to getgrammarly.com/W2Mnetwork. Again, that's getgrammarly.com/W2Mnetwork to download Grammarly for free.
Brilliant.
Episode 5. Show me who you are. Who are you? The little palace holds an event to show off Alina as the Sun Summoner. Kaz, Inez, Jasper, and Arkin infiltrate the palace to kidnap Alina. Mal, injured by Fjordans, makes his way to a first army camp. Here he reveals he has found the stag General Kerrigan had been looking for. Mal, along with a first army general, make their way to the little palace to pass the information on to Kerrigan. The palace guard is initially reluctant to let Mal in, believing the stag to be a myth, but gives in, and escorts Mal to Kerrigan's room. Kerrigan asks Mal to show him exactly where he found the stag. Mal, however, refuses, demanding to see Alina before he shows the general where he found the stag. Kerrigan is angry, but eventually agrees to allow the two to meet later. Kerrigan and Alina kiss after the event, but are interrupted when Arkin attacks a decoy, believing it to be Alina. Alina learns a secret about Kerrigan and attempts to flee the little palace by climbing into the carriage of the crows, who believe their mission has failed. Mal escapes the palace after being attacked by Bagra's accomplice. Bagra is revealed to be Kerrigan's mother and doesn't want him to find the stag. Is this the episode where they reveal that he had turned to the dark side as a child and that he was responsible for the fold? Mm-hmm. Or was that later?
Well, I mean, in the penultimate, Drumbopoline. We get the traditional penultimate episode flashback to properly drop his origin story. But yeah, this is kind of the big reveal of who the puppet master has been all along. Mm. And while I'm at it, speaking of people who have been inexorably connected to tragedy, just how many deaths can we tie to Alina at this point? Between Mal's failed hunting expedition, Alina weaseling her way on board the skiff in the first place, and now her bestie decoy being assassinated. The body count on this bitch.
Yeah, it's kind of Padme-ish, I mean, like the decoy that gets killed for Padme, that's kind of her job. She was supposed to direct fire her way, in case that, because Padme was under threat in Attack of the Clones. But, a lot of people going out of their way and getting killed to protect this one person. Again, I guess I was thinking about the Lego movie the entire time I was watching this, like the special. You know, you are the special, and you have to do a thing, and just how commonplace that is. But I mean, I guess it's kind of common in any kind of, heroic journey.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems to be especially shallow and sort of ham-fisted in YA novels.
Mm-hmm.
At the very least, this one.
Again, though, the sheer volume of deaths she's been either directly or indirectly responsible for at this point. Is one Jedi worth this? I mean, look, yeah, pawns are sacrificial, but at a certain point you run out.
It's funny. Anything else about this particular episode?
It was fun-ish, and yeah, at the end we got our dun 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 moment. But no, I really got nothing else. I'm even kind of running out of things to make fun of because even the action in this episode wasn't really particularly thrilling.
Oh, you didn't enjoy the failed hunting expedition?
Not really.
All right, let's keep it going here. Episode 6, The Heart is an Arrow. Arkin is captured and interrogated after the attempt to kidnap Alina backfires. I don't know why we're supposed to give a shit about this character. Isn't he a slave trader?
I believe so. I think that's what we were getting at.
Okay, so I'm not entirely sure why him getting captured by Kerrigan's people matters. Like, good. He hadn't really ingratiated himself with the team at all, not that I could recall, at least.
No, not particularly. They just kind of amiably tolerated him. He was a means to an end.
And then he's killed by Kerrigan, so who cares? Alina climbs from the carriage, but the crows are unable to catch her. She is recognized as Shu by some townsfolk and is chased into a forest. She reunites with Mal, and they both catch up. After learning about the stag from Mal, Alina realizes she must get to it before Kerrigan. So she and Mal make their way north. The ship that is holding Nina Zenik sinks during a storm. She bonds with one of the surviving Grisha hunters, Matthias, and the two become close after Nina saves him from freezing to death with her powers. So this is when I actually started paying attention to Nina's storyline, because they actually spent some time on it. And, her and Matthias have some fun chemistry together. And I think this is the episode where they're walking through the snow, and she's all, like, shoving her boobs in his face and whatever. And he's like, no, but I am Russian, and sex with American girls is devilish and, and dirty, and I can't do it. And she's like, come on.
Okay. I'm going to stop you right there because I have a question.
Yes, sir.
What can you really come up with off the top of your head that we're supposed to overtly identify as far as the key differences between all these races that they refer to? I mean, and I'm talking on like you're watching Avatar: The Last Airbender, and you can visually, for the most part, differentiate between Water Tribe, Earth Kingdom, Fire Nation, Airbenders. Other than just the fact that they refer to each other, it doesn't count that they just refer to each other as their given race, or that one little cockamamie office scene where the one young woman where Kaz kind of indirectly outs that one young woman's true race by the way she counts money and the way she refers to her alleged homeland.
I mean, go ahead. Sorry.
What do you kind of point to in terms of that's a Shu, that's a Driskella?
Honestly, without reading it, I would have no clue. I'd be utterly clueless. But but without reading it, just sort of what I was able to pick up from the show itself, the impression I got was there are magic users, and then there are not magic users, and it's kind of like mutants and humans. And humans have a natural distrust of mutants, and mutants are now resentful of humans because, humans have made mutants' life more difficult. And that's as far as I got with it.
Yeah. The benders don't trust the muggles, and it's a whole big thing.
Like you do.
Yeah, and neither one is particularly fond of hobbits.
Yeah, I just, I mean, I guess another way of saying it would be, people who use magic are witches, and witches are bad, and so there's a natural animosity. And that, I mean, the show doesn't bother to go any deeper than that. Maybe the book does. But I think again, it plays on the natural, and that's why I'm saying it the way that I am. I think it plays on the natural sort of tropes of, specials and non-specials, and there being inherent distrust between them, as we've seen in like 900 other stories. We've just named 700 of them. So, I don't fault the writers. Assuming the shows are an accurate representation of the books, I don't fault the writers for relying on tried and true tropes. When we reviewed Demon Slayer, I said, "Hey, there's a lot of Star Wars in here. There's a lot of things that I recognize from other stuff. There's a lot of Joseph Campbell here." Well, there's a reason why Joseph Campbell has infiltrated so much of our culture, because it works, and it's a natural attraction for the average human being to be entertained by this stuff. So it's all in the execution, right? Because the actual stems of these things are all going to be the same. I mean, there's, I think it's said there are only a few ideas in the world.
See, that's true, but you can also get a little bit more imaginative and detailed in terms of how you flesh these things, out, and how you drive the points home. And Shadow and Bone just doesn't do. The best examples I can come up with are the army uniforms, in particular when it comes to the uniforms of the Grisha. You're given some kind of sense of heartrenders, squalors, something that sets them apart so that you can tell who is fighting who. You're more clearly able to sort of parse out the allegiances, and in some cases, like when it comes to referring to Druskella and Shu and blah 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 blah, you actually form somewhat of an opinion based not just on what's said, but also what you see, because we're talking about a visual medium here. Hell, Game of Thrones did that. But just I wouldn't be able to tell one race for another if it wasn't referenced sometimes almost incessantly in dialogue.
I mean, I get that. I get your point of your point on that. Like I said, it's not, and I think the only point that I was trying to make was, I don't think the show does anything with the tropes that hasn't been done before. So, I don't think this show, and I know when I say this, there are certain people who get kind of about it, but I think this is definitely meant for the audience of the books, who are young people, like you and me. We are youngest to oldest middle-aged men.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're still in your 30s, but you're getting there. And just by virtue of doing these podcasts, we have consumed a lot of media. And so we might be dismissive of this, and we are dismissive of this, and that's fine, and we're allowed to be. But I also think that this show does not necessarily speak to people who've consumed a lot of media. It speaks to an audience who has not consumed as much, doesn't have as many comparisons to make, and might be experiencing this the way we experience Star Wars. Who, by the way, middle-aged people watch Star Wars in its when it was contemporary and went, "This is fucking Flash Gordon."
I mean, Anne was telling me that at work the night, like the shift right after she tried to watch the first episode with me and got about a half an episode in and just kind of went right back to reading. She was overhearing some of her coworkers who work back of house at Ruby Tuesday talking about it and claiming that there just wasn't anything else like this on TV. It's so fresh and original. And when she told me that, I just kind of thought, "Aw, that's cute."
So that's my point, right? You just made my point for me. That I think younger people who were kept in mind when I think developing this show. I don't think they're not as worried about those people kind of like, hey, wait a minute, this is all a little too familiar and a little too uninteresting. They're going, hey, this is all fascinating stuff, as you just said. So it is what it is. Let's finish up. Episode 7. Unless you've got anything more to say about episode 6, but I don't think you do.
Nope, I don't. We actually got to finish this up because I've got to pick Anne up from work pretty much just about any time. So,
right. So I'll tell you what. I'm going to read both the plot the plot synopsises for 7 and 8. You're going to give me your thoughts, your final thoughts, and then you're excused.
By all means.
Alina and Mal find the stag. Instead of killing it, Alina shares a moment with it before Kerrigan shows up. He injures Mal and kills the stag before having parts of its antlers imbued in Alina as well as his own hand. He shows Alina that he can now control her power and will take her to the fold. He tells her he will heal Mal if she complies. At the campsite near the fold, Genya reunites with Alina to get her ready for an event Kerrigan is holding. He is going to take some nobles across the fold and show them his and Alina's newfound power. Kaz, Inej, and Jesper find a way of getting on a ship to secure a way back home after the train they took with Arkin blows up like you do. Episode 8, our season finale. After safely reaching a city, Nina and Matthias find rest in an inn and even eat together before Fedor arrives and slows Matthias' heart. When Fedor tries to take her back east to Ravka by force, she is forced to declare Matthias as an enslaver to be taken for judgment and bounty, setting a standoff that ends in the ship captain's favor. Awakening imprisoned, Matthias wrongly believes Nina manipulated and betrayed him. "You whore!" It was all he says, sort of. As the ship starts its journey through the fold, Alina uses her powers to shield it and the passengers, creating a light tunnel that shields them from Volcra attacks. When reaching the other side, however, Kerrigan shows his true colors in front of everyone, expanding the fold toward West Ravka, overwhelming it and the brewing rebellion. Kerrigan intends to use the fold to bow all nations toward Ravka's will, but some resist, claiming Kerrigan will make Grisha's a target due to his actions. In the lower decks, Kaz and the others find Mal has snuck on board and they hatch a plan. But Mal rashly moves against Kerrigan, being held at gunpoint, prompting the crows to advance. Zoya, oh boya, witnessing what Kerrigan had done to West Ravka, turns against Kerrigan's forces and starts steering the ship across the fold. Alina struggles to take back full control of her powers until she uses the dagger left by Inej to cut Kerrigan's antlers off his hand, breaking his control and using her light against him before being stopped by Kerrigan's Heartrender, whom Jasper shoots off the ship. While fighting Mal outside the ship, Kerrigan is seemingly killed by Volcra on the return through the fold. Zoya, Alina, and Mal, along with the crows, leave the fold, being the only survivors until they decide to part their ways. with Zoya warning Alina she will now be targeted before departing. Kaz's gang meets Nina at the skiff headed back to Ketterdam. Alina goes with Mal on the skiff as well to continue learning how to use her powers. Back at the fold, a wounded Kerrigan walks out as he summons a shadow army who assumes human forms. So, go ahead. Give me your thoughts in your last words.
Frankly, quite possibly the two best episodes of the season, and not just because it was over after my having not enjoyed most of the show. This was legitimately pretty well done. It was an underwhelming story, but at least it was a fairly satisfying finale. It turns out that Kerrigan's origin as the Dark Heretic was pretty analogous to Dracula's at the start of Netflix's Castlevania anime. There's not a whole lot more character really yet to develop. I do applaud them for kind of going at least a semi-brave route with Nina's story and not having it end in happily ever after between her and Matthias. That at least gives it kind of somewhere else to go, assuming this gets a second season. You know, Alina truly does realize her potential and kind of steps into the Master of Two Worlds role. Mm-hmm. There's kind of just enough that's left unsaid and unsettled that there's still plenty to mine in future seasons, but it's still a satisfying enough victory that it kind of puts a pin in the development we've seen up to this point. Overall not bad. And as far as my final word on the series, again, it's a lot that you've seen before, and that wouldn't be so bad if they could have just been bothered to at least dress it up a little bit differently, to find some way to truly make this world distinct. But it's just not. It's poorly built, it's poorly explained, it's drab, it's truly, truly monotonous. And yeah, it's like I said, it reads loosely like a Soviet Russian allegory in Victorian English cosplay. I mentioned before that I could name a handful of other shows that you might be better off watching. Maybe not even better off, but I'll put it this way to put a more positive spin on it. If you liked this, I think you would probably dig shows like Orphan Black or Peaky Blinders, if for no other reason than just because they're aesthetically similar, but better written, better acted, and just more satisfying overall experiences. I'm not going to write this off as, you know, it's okay to be a little bit bland and simplistic just because, well, it's YA. Because, again, as I said before, just because it's for kids or it's for younger audiences is not an excuse for essentially insulting their intelligence. Because, remember, a whole generation of nerds grew up on J.R.R. Tolkien, the Chronicles of Narnia, Shannara, Ray Bradbury, Isaac Asimov, all these other great true creators of fiction. Hell, to a lesser extent, stuff like H.P. Lovecraft. Although it's decidedly not YA, and those weren't written necessarily for kids. But it goes to show that done right, you can create a universe that appeals to all ages, while still being intelligent and thoughtful. Because again, look at Lord of the Rings. Look at the cross-generational appeal there in terms of you can show it to adults who are mine or Mark's age or even older, and it's the Middle Earth they fell in love with. But on the other hand, you can also show those movies to someone who's say the ages of Lily and Jonas, and you stand just as good a chance that they're going to be absolutely enchanted by it because of the way that the story is delivered and the world is built. And this it fails hard on both of those grounds. So as much as I try to be positive about almost everything we review in the end, ultimately on this one, I hate to say it, but it's a hard pass.
I mean, look, I don't. If you got to go and you want to do your plugs real quick, that's fine. I just say I don't necessarily disagree with you. It was one of those where it came highly recommended by the critics. People were talking about it. I wanted to check it out. I'm not upset that I checked it out. It's just, it didn't. It was not incompetent. It didn't blow my mind. It's squarely in the middle of Mehville.
Yeah, it's forgettable. And that's the most tragic thing that any property can be. It's just something that just gets lost in the shuffle.
That's actually that's all I'm going to have to say on it too. So go ahead and do your plugs, and then you can bug on out.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark, for having me on. I appreciate it. I'm always willing to do shows like this. In fact, I can't wait for us to do Fear Street in the not too distant future. Mm-hmm. But in the meantime, I would advise everybody, please follow me on Twitter at Comer Codex, because that is the best place to get updates when I go live on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Comer Codex. And believe me, especially in the immediate future, you want that because we are in the midst of my Mass Effect Legendary Edition playthrough. Starting from the first game, I'm going to run through the Shepard trilogy, and then depending on how I feel at the end, I might even finally pick up and play Andromeda. But we are still early days in the first game, but I am usually online and streaming, depending on my schedule, anywhere between about 5 p.m. and 10 p.m. Central Time, almost any night of the week, but especially from Friday through Sunday nights.
All right, Sean, we'll talk to you soon. In the
Thanks,
meantime,
man.
Yep. In the meantime, before we go, I want to remind everybody that if you click on the link in the description, you will get a free 30 days of AmazonMusic.com. Amazon Music is a great streaming service. We talk about it all the time here. I've never had a problem finding music I was looking for that you can stream with your free 30 days. If you're like me and you have Amazon Prime, and you have, a Comixology or a Kindle, you just do so much with the Amazon company. Why not bundle everything together and get Amazon Music as well? Try it out for 30 days, see if you like it. If you like it, keep it, and continue to stream all kinds of music. Streaming an unlimited amount of music has introduced me to a lot of bands I would have never have listened to before, even in days when I was going to Tower Records and, filtering, flipping through different, albums and whatnot, and going to the listening booths and all that. So go ahead and check out AmazonMusic.com. The link is getamazonmusic.com/W2M Network. It's right in the description. So if you're listening to this on YouTube, or if you're listening to this on your podcatcher, look at your phone or your tablet and look at the podcast that you're currently listening to. Flip it up a little bit. There's the link. Press on it. It'll take you right there. All right. That's it. We've got a whole bunch of shows coming up for you this week. We're going to be looking at Invincible Volume 2, 8 is Enough, Man of Steel by Brian Michael Bendis, Galactic Kraken, Starship Velociraptor, Castlevania Season 4, Invincible Season 1, and then we're starting a new boxing show called The Four Kings of Boxing. And Chapter 1 is on Roberto Duran, who I learned recently punched out a horse. So he's currently my new favorite fighter. On Friday, Cruella comes to theaters. Our Flashback Friday show will be Maleficent, which kind of kicked off this trend in Disney of making movies about the villains of their cartoons. So check out our review of Maleficent from back when that came out. And assuming all goes according to plan, Jeff Sloboda will be back. He is a brave soul who deigned to review Without Remorse with me, which came out at the end of last month. So, starring Michael B. Jordan, it's a Tom Clancy movie. So, check that out. And then finally on Saturday, Jesse's got another What If syndicated source material dropping. This one is What If Spider-Man Has Kept His Cosmic Powers. So, that's what's in there. Last week, we had Daredevil Season 2, Jupiter's Legacy Volume 1, Spiral from the Book of Saw, Saliva Every 20 Years, plus a whole bunch of singles. Jesse dropped in Unspoken Issues, X-Men number 11, Jupiter's Legacy Volume 1, Impact Under Siege, WrestleMania Backlash. Friday, we dropped 97 different shows. We did a re-airing of Batman v Superman, JMU Hollywood. We reviewed MODOK Assassin, Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead, and Jason Teasley and I reviewed the Zombies trilogy, which is Zombies 1, Zombies 2, and Aquarium of the Dead, which had actually just come out that day. We had some flashback archive shows drop over the weekend. Missing in Action, Long Road to Ruins with Pat Mullen, starring Chuck Norris. And then finally, Luke Cage Season 1. All right, that's it for me. For Sean Comer, I'm Mark Radulich. Thanks for joining us here on TV Party tonight. Be well, be safe, and behave.